The 20th century was a century of change and development. With many new inventions, discoveries, ideals, and war, the 20th century gave the world a new perspective. We can think of it as the most important century until now. It led us to globalization, modernization, and the world we now live in.
The date was June 28, 1914. The place, Sarajevo, Bosnia. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and his wife Sophie were touring in an open car with very little security. Suddenly, a 19-year-old named Princip fired into the car, shooting the Archduke and his wife. They lay there waiting for help. Within an hour, both were dead. This led to a chain of events. Austria-Hungary blamed the Serbians and used the incident as justification for attacking them. Russia, supporting Serbia, delayed this war declaration until Germany, that was an ally of the Triple Alliance, which included the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Italy, attacked France, an ally of Russia, going through Belgium. Then the British, who supported Belgium, attacked Germany. The Triple Entente, an alliance between Russia, France, and the United Kingdom, was formed. Within a week, Great War had begun.
We like to believe Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination is the cause of the Great War. This is not entirely true. The assassination was used as an excuse to declare war. European rivalries, militarism, which was a confrontation of which country had better military, and imperialism. The need of countries to expand their empires altogether created this tension between European countries. It was just a matter of time for all these conflicts and ideas to crash and create war.
Throughout this war, many countries got involved. Alliances changed, and of course, millions of innocent people died. The war expanded very fast, and consequences were not measured. Only the end justifies the means, was what mattered at the time.
World War I marked a new era. Warcraft developed at a very fast pace. Poison gas, tanks, machine guns, submarines, and aircrafts were used in war for the first time. This led to a small industrialization and destruction. It also caused more lateral damage. Everything was being developed so fast, people didn't have time to think of the consequences.
Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States during the First World War, fought for his idea of peace, and so the League of Nations was born. The League of Nations was to maintain the order among the countries and discuss international problems, such as the consequences of the First World War. In result, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, even though Woodrow Wilson had a different idea of peace.
The Versailles Treaty was imposed to the Germans. They had no opinion whatsoever concerning the punishments. In some way, they were forced to sign the treaty by the League of Nations. Germany, of course, disagreed completely. They were blamed for the war, which was a great dishonor for his country. Also, since they had to pay for the damage, Germany started having economic problems. They had lost their territory and had to reduce their army. It was a harsh time for the country. With no political power whatsoever, Germans went through a lot. Another important decision from the Treaty of Versailles was the decision of the colonies and the territories. This was a hard decision since all the countries wanted power and control as many territory as they could.
The 20th century was not only dark and bad, it also had their bright moments as the Roaring Twenties, where great, useful, and trendy things were created. Mickey Mouse, jazz music, bubblegum, penicillin, and Model T Ford are just a few examples that marked the decade. But it wasn't only good things that happened. On 1929, the biggest economic crisis ever took place in the United States, affecting all. It was so bad that economists call it the Great Depression, the longest market crash in history. The economic prosperity of the 20s was just superficial. This was mainly because America had the policy of isolation. Their prices and taxes were lowered. This gave Americans the option to buy goods on the margin, paying companies back in small installments. Banks were able to give big loans for little in return, but in reality, Americans were just creating a huge debt for themselves. They were unaware of how much their money was mounting up. People only realized this until the Wall Street crash. After spending all their money and living lives of luxuries, we can say the Great Depression came to America as a hangover. People started to lack food and resources, and so poverty was extreme. The main characteristics of the Great Depression were the bank failures, overproduction, and deflation of prices. Meanwhile, in Europe, people wanted someone who could bring them out of the big hole they had fallen into. So, totalitarianism rose. Totalitarianism is a way of government where authorities have unlimited power and control over public and private life of people.
Countries were looking for economical stability by trusting a powerful leader. People wanted to get out of the Great Depression. They were desperately looking for a change. This made it easy for politicians to raise power and to have complete control over their people. They promised to expand their territories and made alliances, all for the purpose of having more power as fast as they could.
With totalitarianism, citizens were expected to agree with the ideologies of their rulers or they would suffer the consequences. The Russian totalitarian leader was Stalin. He controlled everything and everyone. He monitored telephone lines, mail, and all sources of information like newspapers, motion pictures, the radio, art, literature, etc. The schools were strictly controlled, and if someone disagreed, he would be eliminated without any mercy.
Joseph Stalin was a dictator. During his rule, the Soviet Union became an industrial and military superpower from just being a peasant society. He ruled by terror, and millions of people died during his dictatorship. He raised to power after Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik, died. Stalin took control of the party. When he got to power, he collectivized farming and executed or sent to forced labor camps his potential enemies. He wanted to achieve power as fast as he could. He used strategies and fooled his enemies in a way only he could. He was very smart. He knew who were his enemies and he knew how to get rid of them.
As totalitarianism grew as well as the rivalries, the peace was hanging on a thread. After the Treaty of Versailles, not everybody totally agreed or was satisfied with the result. The country that mostly disagreed was Germany, because it was the only country that had to make changes in militarism and territory. One of the main causes of the Second World War was food. As Germany started to invade other countries for resources, they looked for a strategy to retain it, which eventually didn't work. The agreement between the USSR and Germany to avoid violence let Germany invade Poland first. In short time, the USSR was also in the crosshairs of Hitler. Hitler wanted more and more. He wanted an empire across all Europe, but only with one desire, the elimination of the Jews.
World War II also had a huge impact. New rivalries developed, in a way that the world was divided in two main powers, the United States and the USSR. Also, millions of innocent people lost their lives. World War II was even more extremist than World War I. After all these casualties, the United Nations was created. The idea was to outlaw wars of aggressions and therefore avoid a Third World War. Also, after World War II, the colonization increased. Countries like India, Indonesia, Philippines, and some Arab countries became independent. This meant a change in the way the world functioned. We can call it as the beginning of a new era.
The first half of the 20th century was very important. It was an era of development and the greatest wars occurred in that time. As a result, these wars gave us lessons of peace and agreements between countries. Also, from that moment on, our world started to change at a faster pace. Thanks to these events, we can live in the world we know today.